Hello everybody, welcome back to another edition of the Contest Realm podcast. Yes, we will be changing the name at some point, but there's just so much stuff that we've got to go over, and even this particular episode is going to be a devoted episode because, as per usual, everything is quiet, then all of a sudden Kabam throws something at us that we then have to talk about in great detail. This is episode 86. And as always, I'm joined by Dan of Frontline MCOC, who you can find at www.frontlinemcoc.home.blog and on Twitter under the handle at frontlinemcoc. Dan, we thought we were going to be talking about update notes and information. Instead, we're going to be talking about balancing and ratings.
Yeah, Rich, earlier in the week, it looked like such a slow news week that we were debating whether we would have content for a show.
Yeah.
And then Kabam threw a Thursday night news dump on us with the return of champion balancing. But this time it's going to be different because we've got a rating system.
A rating system that can we see?
I don't know. We're gonna get into it. There is so much to react to. There is a lot to unpack. But first up, I just wanted to get sort of your initial reaction, when you first saw this post and that champion balancing was coming back. How did that make you feel?
I said why.
Yeah.
Why now?
Yes, I think the why now is a very good point, right? Because right, the state of the game, right?
Yes.
You're prepping for this big game engine relaunch, and that you've announced a beta and a timeline, so we know it's coming this spring, right? Get the game in a good spot, get some positive momentum before you're going to do something that's going to be divisive. That is my take on this.
It's so true. It's just we come out of the news. It's okay, a few little announcements here and there. Kabam seemed to be a bit quiet, so they must be working on something. The little thing about the inputs, and it's okay, good. I'm feeling excited, feeling pumped, getting my my chi levels up higher, and it's just then, oh, right, now I've got to think about the fact that my champions may not be safe, but also it could be some other champions could be bumped up. I don't know where to. I feel like I'm in a very weird relationship.
It is. Well, and I try to be fair and balanced, and I think I'm generally a very positive person, and I do love the game and view it through that lens. But here's the thing. Normally with an announcement, I feel even one that maybe we're nervous about or we see some negativity, and we can say it's well, let's see how it plays out. But this is different because we already watched this movie. We gave it bad reviews. They canceled the sequels. But now it's being rebooted. And my big question that I think Kabam has to answer for this to have a chance to fly is, why is it different this time?
Yeah.
Because as far as I can tell, nothing has changed. There's a lot in that post to unpack, but the core issue of champion balancing and its impact on the community and how the game is monetized, none of that has changed since 2 years ago.
No.
So I don't see how we don't have the same problems.
Absolutely. The biggest thing, when it comes to spending, and we've seen the data that not a huge amount of people spend on the game, but enough spend on it to then go. It's either going to take in two ways, right? And I've definitely come to that point where if I spend on the game, regardless of if it's a small increment amount or a big amount, and whether or not it's a case I'm chasing for a champion or just chasing some other things, but more commonly we're chasing for champions. It's a case of I've spent my money, but do I feel like I've got value for that money? And the biggest problem that happened last time was I remember spending on the Namor crystals and the Colobsidian crystals, and then having to get that additional crystals given to us after the point of changing of the champion, or the crystal was wrong or something, the usual thing. And then finding out later on that year the champion had changed. Then you kind of go around the thought process of, well, why do I spend on this game? Or why do I spend to grab a champion that I'm oh, right. So the investment of rank up materials is not could be or could be not refunded, but as well spending that physical money has now reached a kind of a negative point in my mind.
Right.
You question your spending in the game.
Yeah, and let's not let's not mince words about this. This champion balancing disproportionately affects the spending portion of the community. Because those are the people that will have access to the champion in the window of rebalancing for the most part, right?
Yeah.
Like there's probably some nibbling you can do free to play around featured crystals, or maybe you're going to really grind some calves, but for the most part we're talking about people who buy early access bundles,
Yeah.
and people that are grinding out those champs in arena, which at the 6-star level, that is not free to play. That is load up on some Odins. So that's who is going to be impacted, and those spenders are usually very, very invested and are very, very vocal because of their investment. So yeah, I mean, like you said, like that was the big problem last time, and to kind of, and I think there's a lot about the last experience that makes people nervous. Not so much, I think, even about the results, right? But it's really about the methodology. And Kabam has announced this rating system, and as of right now, like, we haven't seen the rating system, and
No.
I'm a little unclear about how this rating system will be used and what it even intends to be. Like, is this their version of a tier list? Like saying, like, in game this champion is a 4 for damage, or is it saying these are our design intentions for this champion, and we're thinking its damage should be a 4, and if it turns out it's a 5, we're bringing it down to a 4.
Yeah.
I don't know. I would really love to see some answer on how they're going to use that.
Yeah, and the biggest thing when it comes to, like, tier lists and this rating system, a lot of it is opinion based. It could be an individual. It's really understanding who's in charge of that particular system. Now, I could look to other games for a comparable rating system, but doesn't impact so much with this. Like, a good example is, well, sorry to mention a name, Raid Shadow Legends, okay? Yep. In that particular game, it has a list of content which a particular champion is kind of voted to be good for. Now, debatable, because again it falls down to opinion of going, okay, well, this champion's good for this content, this content, this content. Yes, it doesn't 100% compare to the situation, but it's comparable from a point of who votes for what to classify in the systems of, is this champion good for A, B, C, D, or E? The same way in this particular example, it's going, right, well, damage, utility, and other things of voting, is this good? So it's the understanding of, is this beneficial for the players to vote for the rating system? Or, as it says in the forum thread, these balancing initiatives will be spearheaded by an expanded champion balancing team here at Kabam. So I don't know if that means that they have the power to vote or the power to vote. Which it wasn't very clear on, falls down to the player.
Yeah, I mean, I assume they're going to be looking at data, and we'll talk about sort of their beta program here, but it looks like they're going to be releasing the champions, and then the first couple months looking at the gameplay data. But like they've done this before, and I think this is, again, one of those things, like, what's changed, because in that last round of champion balancing of new champs, when they tried to launch this, I believe there were 6 champions, and they looked at it and they said, Namor needs to get taken down, his regen's too much. Okay, all right. I mean, maybe I don't agree with that, but Namor is still he's still a very useful champion. You still play him in the same places. And he was very, very hyped at the time. Cull Obsidian, he needed to get taken down, too much damage, even though he had no utility. He's Cosmic Star-Lord, right? Like, okay, yeah, he hits hard, but you can play him in limited situations. The data also said Ebony Maw needed a buff. Okay, we all agree with that. He's been buffed a couple times. He still does nothing. The data also said Ronin was perfectly balanced. that Invisible Woman didn't need any help, but Human Torch needed a buff.
Yeah.
So out of all of that, they looked at six champions, and the best champion in that pool got buffed.
Yeah, I think this.
That's the one champion that got buffed.
Yeah.
So that's what when you say, like, do we trust the people looking at the data to read the data and make a decision? Like, it's really hard when that's your sample size to say, like, I believe that this is going to turn out to and make sense, right? Because Human Torch is, like, he's one of the best war attacker of the last couple of years. Like, doesn't he get banned now that we have attacker bans?
I think this is just like it's a lottery. I think you nail on the head when you talk about trust, and it's like it is a lottery of trust when these buffs are brought to the, and I'm not disputing Kabam on what they brought. When they did those champion rebalances, they brought the special I can't remember, like the graphs, the special graphs.
Yeah, they did bring a lot of data, right? Yeah, they did.
But the biggest problem is what they see to what they do, and the they do part of things are, well, they can look at the stats of like, oh, how many people are using Ebony Maw as a lead champion nowadays, and also for interaction in various different areas. The same with Ebony Maw, the same with Ronin, and the same with various other champions. And it's just that there seems to be this correlating difference between what the players experience and use, and the volume. I mean, that's the data we never see.
Yeah.
How much on volume the champions that were in that pool of buffs were used. And I'm sure that's the thing of going, okay, well, Cull Obsidian and Namor were used extensively in certain content. And absolutely, I still use Namor in various different selections.
Of course, like he has huge utility, right? But like, especially like Cull Obsidian, like his, it's in a bit, he's like Star-Lord, right? Like the damage is huge, but the utility is so low that the damage becomes meaningless in anything that's a challenge.
Oh,
so yeah, I mean that's the thing, right? Like we have a history with this. Like we know, we know some of the decisions that they've made, and they feel questionable, like you said, to people who play the game. So like that's the problem, and I think they look at this as a game development problem. Like we need to balance our game for the long-term future of the game. And on that, in a vacuum, I could agree with that. That would be great. Like we all know Ghost and Quake are broken. Like, no one's disputing that. Like that's not healthy. There's a reason we're never getting 6-star Quake. We all know that.
Yeah.
Right? Like that's fine, but the thing with the balancing last time was like, okay, like you got Namor and Cull a little more in line with what you intended, and that's fine. And really, like you could play Namor in the same situations. He wasn't nerfed into the ground, and Cull's still Cull. He still hits things real hard with that big hammer. But what did it cost you?
Yeah,
right? Like months of development time, huge arguments on the forum, people quitting the game, people posting nasty comments and videos, which I realize is going to happen anyway.
Yeah.
But like, that was the ultimate juice not worth the squeeze, and that's why they canceled it. So again, like, how are we not going to end up in the same place when they release the next really, really good champion and take them down, even if it's like 2%?
Yeah.
Like, is that 2% bringing that champion in line worth the time and the aggravation? And then, like with Colin Namor, the compensation got bungled. And that was like an ongoing, I mean, Rich, how many times did you have to answer questions about when that compensation was coming out?
Oh, no. Oh, God, just went on and on and on. The way that I see a lot of this is it's tough to see Kabam not doing damage to the spenders of the game. I know we just talked about a moment ago. Yep. And after what happened to Marvel Realm of Champions, and again, that's not really 100% comparable, but it is comparable. Again, if you look at, if people stop spending on this game because they're uncertain. I mean, for me, I was a massive fan of Odin as a character. Yep. I really wanted him in the game, and then when he landed, it just did not hit on factors. Yeah, great pre-fights, great that we can add buffs to the start of the champion. That's good, but that kind of throws it into the kind of Apocalypse territory, except for Apocalypse had a lot to him that you could then kind of like use. So what then, like having something in the that didn't exactly hit, and then having to wait for that champion to be reworked again, was like, okay, well, something like this with the balance system could have like found that a lot more earlier. But again, every time that something is new that's added in, that's a character that players are passionate about, that becomes a champion, you're then going and questioning again the spend and like what kind of further damage that
questioning
does.
the spend, and you know, it really gives a more negative element of the community. This they could just talk about nerfs all the time, right?
Yeah.
And sort of like sow the seeds of fear and doubt. Like, new champions released. Oh, I saw him do something cool. Oh, they're gonna nerf it, right? And then like that's a huge narrative that's gonna trickle down to a lot of players that don't understand the full context of what's going on. And it, like I said, but it just, it's also a reasonable fear when you're talking about spending $50 on an early access bundle. Like, I think it's fair to be a little skeptical.
And that's just the point about it, champion investment as well. And again, you've hit the nail on the head with like this is going to give more work elsewhere. Like, we're going to see the forums flooded with stuff about every time a champion, like, oh, by the way, we're going to rebalance this new champion coming into the game, or this champion for whatever reason. It's like, well, now the community management team or the community team of Kabam have to then work twice as hard to kind of relay that information. They have to also take more negativity. So I feel sorry for Kabam Boo, for maybe Kabam Zibit, Kabam Mike as well.
They're gonna get crushed.
Exactly. So I hope the people in Kabam a little bit higher up do understand that they have now meant that a lot of negativity, low morale has now been flooded in as a result. And that's not fair. Like, imagine going home after work knowing that somebody hates your guts because of this reason. So
I couldn't do it. God bless those community managers. I couldn't do it.
No, exactly, and that's the problem, isn't it? Like the bigger picture is, hey, I'm a human being who kind of like goes to gaming to de-stress and just chill out with my grind, enjoy this, and kind of get away from the reality of hard choices and stresses from the outer thing. Now I'm coming to the game to be stressed about making the decision about ranking up a champion. Because I don't know what's going to happen to it.
Yeah, and you talk about the community managers and stuff. Like, all right, like let's work through the process a little bit, right? Like, we're going to have this rating system, and this rating system is going to have some impact on how these balance updates are communicated to the champion. So let's say they release a new champion, and kind of like I was talking about before, like they either say it's a 4 or intend it to be a 4, whatever. It's supposed to be a 4 for damage, but it's not. We don't know that just in a vacuum. We know that they also say, 4 other champions are also a 4 in damage. Right? Like, let's say they call, I'm just making this up. Let's say they call like Venom a 4 for damage, right? And they say, oh, the new champion, no, I came in a little too hot. It's supposed to be a 4, but it's higher than that. And then, I get on the forum and say like, hey man, like my Venom hits way harder than this new champ, and you're nerfing him, and I don't see it, right?
Yeah.
Like, isn't that going to be the argument every time? Like, we're going to have this set of data to compare to each other and be like, nah, those don't feel like the same thing.
Yeah. And this is the thing about, well, the biggest thing that I've just popped in my mind is, well, do you have to take two separate things to talk about? Well, actually, no, it wouldn't be two. It could be 3 or 4 mastery setups. Like, are you taking like, are they going to take into consideration with a particular mastery, or do they have to branch into various different elements? Because it's not. You could say, okay, non-suicide masteries, suicide masteries, but then that would be completely illogical compared against the. I doubt of the hundreds of thousand players in this game that they have either a designated A and B mastery setup that's all the same. There's going to be ones with ones that are more kind of geared for whatever reason in certain content. They may be completely away from suicide masteries, or a generic kind of non-suicide mastery. Variables to this are very important, because it could be a case of, well, this champion is too powerful with suicide masteries. Yeah, that's great. That doesn't mean to say that you should reduce down the damage and have it then be an implementation that it needs to be upped in damage or reduced because one particular mastery creates an unrealistic variable.
Yeah, or you could argue the same thing with utility, right?
Yeah.
Like, context is everything in this game. Like, Ronin is a 1 for utility, except when he's a million.
Yeah.
Because he stun locks the opponent into oblivion, right? Like, he's an all or nothing. Morningstar's a little bit like that, right? Like, she's fine, but you put 30 buffs on the defender and hit your special 2.
Absolutely.
And, oh boy, it's a good time, right? But those are pick your spot things.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, like, I think they want champions. I'm being a little overboard there, and I know they want champions to have a place to shine. It's the champions that shine too much everywhere that tend to be a problem. But still, like, it's all relative. Like, we all weigh that stuff. It based on, like, what's a problem with our roster, right? Like, when you're talking about, again, like a Venom, like, if I really am bothered by Spider-Man's evade, Venom is really, really valuable to me.
Yeah.
Because I'm bad at what he fixes.
Yeah.
Right? And that's the thing, is, like, because the game is so, like, rock, paper, scissors and utility based, it's like, when we get a new champion, it's like, what problem do they solve? And then if you start, playing around with what problem they solve, then you get into the whole, like, why did we acquire this champion? Which is probably the next thing we should talk about. Like, I don't understand how they haven't seen how champion acquisition is directly tied to this balancing. And you've talked about that a little bit, but, like, do you think that they should change the way they release champions if they really intend to do that?
It's a bit of a, I gotta be honest, the way that I don't see a problem since we had, say, the time of Namor. I haven't seen, like, a huge problem with overpowered champions, especially because they created Hercules, they created Kitty Pryde, they recently. I don't see a huge problem with them. What I do see a problem with is the new champions that don't hit quite as much, and that's the thing about the data should present. Okay, how many players are regularly playing champions that we've added in the last year or to 2 years, and that should be where the Kabam should be focusing their rebalance. Rather than saying, okay, well, if we've got champions that are hit new but hitting not too hard, because I think they've already they would put them in with some sort of responsibility of kind of like output, the same way, like, Hercules. Oh, is Hercules too powerful as is? Right. I do feel at times, and it goes back to that thing I always say about, well, one champion a month should be put out as opposed to 2, because then the focus point is on 1, and therefore they can make sure that one champion is delivered to a point of fairness on all the elements that they want to tick boxes of, rather than doing 2. I know they probably want to do 2 because it increased spending for the people that want to spend, but the problem is they've then got situations like this where the communication factor has created much more of a fear factor. And I know they want to put information, say this is what we're working on, but they can't really put in something so crucial to the game and then put where is it? For example, this is what we plan to do. Putting in, for example, that means that we don't know what you want to do unless we've been the litmus test to go, okay, well, you want to go down this route, you want to have a score-based system that doesn't include things like variables on things like masteries, utility, and leads us to making this podcast.
Yeah, right. I mean, I was just thinking about it, because you'd have to, like you said, the new champions are so core to their monetization, right? Like they're never backing off the 2 champion a month thing, because that's what pays the bills. And listen, it's a free to play game, and we understand that. But a lot of the places where they've got in trouble is the new system, right?
Yeah.
Like, and I think with the 6-star arena and Cav crystals and champions immediately available as 6 stars. Like, on one hand you've got, say, like a Ghost, who I mean, she's probably her and Quake. The reason that her and Quake exist the way they exist is because when they were designed, they were never intended to be played the way that we now play them, right? Like that was unseen. That was not in the design intent. Quake. That's why Quake's never getting the 6-star crystal, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah.
If they could go back in time, there would be no 6-star Ghost. I'm pretty convinced about that. But now you've got a system where champions go into the 6-star pool, at least from a Cav crystal and eventually a featured crystal, fairly soon. So they're just out there in the wild instantly at the highest rarity. Now, of course, because of money and spending, but that's what really unbalances the game. If it was a scenario where, like, everyone who's uncollected or above gets the 4-star on day 1, and then you can play the champ and you can test it out, and people get a sense of it. There's going to be people that take that 4-star into really hard content and try to push it because it's new, and people love to do that. And that would be great. And then we would start to build up a data set, and then we'd say, like, okay, like, let's tweak a couple things before we really let this champion loose as 5-star and 6-star. And then you do the beta, and you play around with the tweaks, and you make it live, and then you do the Cav crystals, and then you do the arena.
Yeah.
We're not having this conversation. Because then you're taking the money out of it, right? Like, then we're saying this is final, and we've made our decision. Here's what it really is now. You've got a lower star champion. You've tested it out. If you still like it, now it's time to let it loose in the wild, and you can go for it if you want it.
Yeah.
I mean, if they did that, then they would solve the problem, and they would really be able to balance this game, and it would probably be to the benefit of the game in the long term. But they, this just seems like, they want to fix a game development problem without fixing the marketing PR problem that it represents.
Absolutely. And that's a big point as well with the PR side of things with the game. It has not been a good 7 months.
Right, exactly.
And putting and again, it goes down to even like at the end of this forum thread, it says, that's all we have for you today, summoners, but moving forward, communication and feedback are going to be paramount, so sound off in the comments about down below how you feel about everything we've talked about today. What do you like or dislike about rebalances of new champions? While we may not be able to take action on something right away, but want to take your thoughts into consideration as we make decisions moving forward. I would be brutally honest, and again, it goes back to what I said a moment ago, is if you don't 100% concretely have put together what you were going to deliver, what this does, it stirs the pot of the community at a point where we don't need to be wound up and stirred up.
Yeah,
we
do not need any more stirring.
No,
please no more stirring. and it's not just scanning it doesn't seem to be going well for him.
No.
On the now, it's the forums.
Yeah.
So let's be fair. The forums is not where you go to for sunshine and positivity.
No, not.
But even for the forums, it's not going well. And I think one of the things that people are most disappointed on is that the resources of champion balancing appear to be taking away from the buffing of old champs, at least in the near to midterm. Where we've got no buffs in February, so that's 2 months of no buffs, and then it looks like we're just getting a Psycho Man value update in March, and he is probably on that list of least played champions. No, I don't know. He's still got the gives people the issues where he's too bright and flashy, so I think he's kind of a poor choice to buff. Because I think there's a lot of people that just don't want to use him no matter how good he is.
Yeah.
And then there's some stuff about some VX F stuff for Storm and Deadpool XForce, and they're going to give Gamora another chance. So, I mean, all that's fine. I like it when champions get new animations. That's cool.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it still feels like there's a lot of older champions that need some help.
Yeah. Like, you got Superior Iron Man, Iron Fist. So many champions to name.
Yeah,
I mean,
Rocket.
I mean, Deadpool XForce is still some champion that's not been looked. And that was literally one of the first 6 stars in the pool that you could be picking up. And you're like, well, I've sat on this for nearly 2, maybe even 3 years. And it's like, what do I do? What do I do with this? Like,
yeah,
there's only been the variant 8 recently that you could use him in, and it's like, right, okay, fine, so I'm just using this in variant 8, but there's nothing there. In variant 8 you might need certain things, like certain elements of utility to it that you might need to power control. Yeah, you got the Deadpooloids, but a lot of the time on those paths you're like, right, well, why does everything need energized and I can't get that blue Deadpooloid in order to power control? Funny enough, I put up a little kind of community post, like, should I do a variant 800% guide? The ratio to people that were like, no, variant 8 is ass, was a lot higher than I thought. I think it was just like a 60% in favor, 40% not in favor of doing the guide. And I just thought, well, that's the story of 2021 and that variant.
Yeah, it's not that bad.
No, it's not ridiculously bad.
There's some stuff in there that I wasn't super happy with, but there's some cool interactions there too. I think Variant 8 gets a little bit of a bad rap. I like some stuff. If you've got a Gwenpool who's duped, you can have some fun in Variant 8.
Yeah. Or a champion that may come in the future that could potentially be rebalanced.
Right. I mean, you look at, sometimes, yeah, exactly. Right. So that's the thing. I don't know. Overall, like, I gave a lot of feedback to Kabam in the CCP about this, and I get the sense that they, like I said, they look at this as a game design issue, and my day job is in marketing, and I look at it as a marketing issue because I feel like it was a big marketing and PR problem last time, and that's just how I approach it, because that's where my brain lives. And it's like, when anytime something gets announced, I think, okay, how do you sell that? How do you get momentum behind that? And I just they weren't able to do that last time, but I'm really curious how they intend to this time, or have they just said we're doing it anyway?
Yeah.
No matter what the consequences are, we're never going to know the answer to that.
Yeah, I really want to get behind something like this. So I was like, first of all, rebalance rating system. And I was like, okay, before reading this, what are my hopes? And that's the first thing, thinking, what is my hope? And my hope was that a rating system would be player voted, in a sense that you go, okay, so the players are able to, I don't know, go to their champion section, for example. So if you're watching on YouTube, I can give you a visual representation. You go to your info of your champion, and then there's an extra kind of field of, I don't know, performance stats or something, and
Right.
on there you're able to, like, I don't know, click a number where you or to click some kind of variable numbers of going, okay, like suicide mastery compatible, or something of like damage associated to that. Thing is, it's not my responsibility to come up with a rating system that works. Maybe that's an idea for a video. That's Kabam's, in order to sell me on what they plan to do. And that's just the thing. Without anything I can see that players or the entire community are voting for, I cannot get behind this. And I really want to get behind something that they have as an idea. It's not there. Putting in, for example, on stuff and coming up with these areas of coverage of how it should be voted, and not knowing who is being a part of the system of voting, and a number of people. Like, okay, so if there's 10 people in this special team that are a Kabam team rather than a I don't know what team, it's like, well, is that personal opinion of one of the developers? Does it take into consideration data? And as I said, just goes back, I want to be sold on this, Dan, but I'm not sold on
it. Because I mean, you're right, because if there was a really good rating system and it was in game, like, think of how useful that is for new and progressing players.
Yes.
Right? I just got this champ. You don't have to do, well, you still could do that. Is the champ good? But look at you, oh, like, I'm getting, like, oh, this champion is a really good defender. I'm looking for a war defender. I should rank them up to be a defender. Like, just, just sort of the baseline questions of, like, there's 200 plus champions. Like, knowing a little bit of intent and where the champion kind of fits in the scope of the game is helpful. I think as you're learning the game, it's different for those of us that have been here forever and have a working knowledge of most of the champs and can incorporate a couple new champs a month and so on. But when you're coming in fresh, it's like, how do you know this stuff? Right? Like, it's, I don't know, it's it's a lot to take in, and like you said, like, I do want to be positive about it. I agree. Like, I know I've been beating it up for a half hour, but, like, in general, like, I want to be positive, and I do think a more balanced game is good. Like, I don't think just ridiculously broken champs that you have to engineer content around, like you do with Ghost and Quake. Like, we've seen the impact of that and how that can hurt the rest of the game, right? Like, we've seen the negative impacts of unbalanced champions being released. I just wish they had what felt like a more comprehensive plan to address the problem, and not look at just, like, tweaking some champion numbers in a vacuum.
I think as well, it does run both ways with things like we don't want to go down the route of saying, okay, well, it's always, just use Ghost, just use Quake, just use this, just use that. I think it's just the point of Kabam also understanding when they're creating content is to not go, and same thing with Kabam, going, we'll just put inverted controls on that boss, or we'll just put this on this particular champion, or we'll just put this, and it then kind of takes away from that experience of using, I'm not saying, like, the game should be, you can use every single champion. It's just a case of, like, allowing more, I don't know, a chunk of, at least, of the 217 rather than, or 250, whatever, 210s of whatever champions. Rather than saying, okay, well, just use 1 or 2 champions, and maybe if you're kind of skilled, you can have your roster expand to 5 champions overall. It's saying about going massive scope. The same way I felt like they were going in a certain direction back in 6.3 with going, here's some buff, there's some boosts that you can grab along the way that's going to allow you to take on the content. Well, the same thing was saying, look, if you could take a Falcon and take it against the champion that's throwing debuffs at you, but you've taken a boost to then take on that. It's just so that Kabam also understand from their perspective, we as players want to use a large scope of roster rather than
you talk about that scope of roster thing. Like, that's one of the things I've liked so much about Act 7 is, like, every lane, it's like you kind of get excited. You're like, oh, like, my Hulkbuster is going to be great here. Like just different stuff is like there different champions get a chance to shine on different lanes, and you get rewarded for that RPG knowledge, and I think that's why a lot of people like 7.1 and 7.2.
Yeah.
For there's more reasons than that, but I think that's one of the big ones. I think we've kind of talked through kind of some of the issues with the balancing. There was one more note on this that is getting probably little attention because of everything else that's going on. But the expanded champion design team is working with Kabam John is also going to be working on new Alliance War tactic updates and the next iteration of Karina's challenges. Yay!
Yay!
So we've kind of got a tease for the next Karina's challenges. I think that's good.
Yeah.
Because we haven't seen anything for the true endgamers in a while.
Yeah.
Probably not in the last 4 or 5 months. And those are the folks that are getting on Twitter and on the forums and saying January's so dry. Give me something to, tap and swipe.
Yeah.
So definitely let's get those folks some Karina's challenges, some Summer of Pain too, Grandmaster's Gauntlet too. Let's see a little bit more of that. So I'm excited for those folks that they're going to get something hopefully in the near future, or at least we know it's in the pipeline. I'm not going to be doing them anytime soon, but
no, same
as we talk about, we have to, as players, it's important to understand it's a big game and not everything's about you.
That's definitely the point. I am glad to see that. Not too fussed about Alliance War tactics because I just think that this why.
Yeah, I mean, well, actually, let's talk about that a little bit. We got through a whole 3 wars without canceling a war this season for an enlistment bug. I don't know. I started getting a bunch of messages before enlistment. Everyone's like, I can't enlist. And then, we cancel the war. Not this season yet, but it's just kind of like, what?
We had the duplicate defenders thing as well.
Oh, that's right. Yes.
I give up. I give up.
I know. I know why there's still Alliance War seasons, but I'm also kind of like, wish they could put it out to pasture and
start something.
I'm hoping when solo competitive shows up, maybe we can just transition out of this. Clearly this isn't working.
Exactly. I just don't remember a season that went well. I mean, you can put in you can put in new tactics all you like. It's just
it doesn't solve the problem. I mean, we were talking about this in early 2020 with the roadmaps and the Alliance War intentions, and it's it didn't get any better because the tactics just nibble around the edge of what's a core problem.
Yeah.
With that game mode, but I'm hopeful that solo competitive can give those players what the challenge that they want and deserve, and then maybe we can clean things up for the rest of us.
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely. I think we've properly dissected this this balancing and rating system. I just think that it's without fully outlining how they plan to do this system and what is different from the last time to this time. I just don't see the point of putting out a forum thread quite like it. Unless they were going to do something in the short term of just saying, hey, we've had some ideas and just running it past the community. What are your thoughts on? And then put a little kind of synopsis to this and then leaving it out there rather than kind of looking like in what seems to be many paragraphs committing to changing a lot of stuff. And I know Kabam will see this particular situation very differently. But the biggest problem that they face is that don't alienate spenders. That's the worst thing you can do.
Yeah, I mean that's how you kill the game right there. If you alienate spenders, it's you can say that about anything you do in the game. That's one thing you have to be very, very careful about, and we definitely saw a lot of spenders being very vocal, like during the last round of champion balancing. Like it all, it's one of those things, like it doesn't matter. Like
Yeah.
if if you take Namor down 1% and but it causes people to quit the game, like that I don't see how that's worth it. But
No.
it's not my game.
Exactly. Final thoughts, Dan?
I thoughts and prayers to the Kabam forum mods and community managers, and good luck to Kabam John. I like you very much, but I'm nervous about this.
Yeah, same here. Wanted to see a bit more from this. I think, as always, me and you are the same thing. We hope for the best with this stuff, because this game is meant to be our stress relief, our fun escape, and going back to the stresses of what was 2019 to 2020 when this all happened is like, yeah, don't want to go back there, thanks. But Dan, plans for next week?
In game working on 725, but the big thing is tomorrow we are getting somewhere between 12 and 20 inches of snow. That's about 30 to 50 centimeters for those of you that use metric.
I'm jealous.
So if you're listening to this on Sunday, ask me how my shoveling's going.
God, I am jealous. Like, I don't know if we'll get it, or there's rumors that we'll get it in February from Sweep Across, but no, we never seem to get it. I am jealous. I think for me,
it's going to be a big snowstorm, and my son is hyped. He's got his snow tube all blown up, and he is, he can't wait to go sledding. He is so excited about snow. He is, he's going to be bouncing off the wall all day during the storm tomorrow, and waiting for me to get out and shovel so he can get to the hill and become a human daredevil.
Gotcha. Yeah, love to hear about that. Right, everybody, thank you very much for listening to the podcast. This has been a little dissection on the rebalance situation, thoughts and comments and whatever, and hopefully Kabam respond back and we'll see what happens. Right, see you everybody, have a good weekend, bye bye.